The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network and our fine family of broadcast affiliates across Canada, the United States, Central America, South America, the Pacific Rim, the Caribbean, 20 Asian countries, and now across Europe. If you'd like to give us a call, our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii at 1-877-528-8255. My email address is xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, you can chat with me at talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com, that's our main website, and www.xzonetv.com. If you'd like to get the past editions of the X Chronicles newspaper, if you'd like to get X Zone t-shirts, if you'd like to get X Zone coffee cups, whatever you'd like to get pertaining to the X Zone, visit our store at www.xzonestore.com. My guest this hour is Dr. Susan Shumsky, and she is a foremost spirituality expert. Boy, that was a hard one to get out. Pioneer in the personal development field, highly acclaimed and greatly respected professional speaker, New Thought minister, Doctor of Divinity, and an award-winning author. And she has practiced self-development disciplines since 1967. Her books, Divine Revelation, in continuous print with Simon & Schuster for 12 years, as well as the COVR award-winning books, Miracle Prayer and Exploring Chakras, and her books, Exploring Meditation, Exploring Chakras, and How to Hear the Voice of God, have been published in several languages worldwide. Dr. Shumsky's personal mentor was enlightened spiritual master from India, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, founder of Transcendental Meditation and guru of the Beatles and Deepak Chopra. She lived in Maharishi ashrams in secluded areas, including the Himalayas of India and the Swiss Alps, for 20 years, and was on his personal staff for 7 years. Then she studied New Thought and metaphysics for another 21 years. Since 1970, Dr. Shumsky has taught yoga, meditation, prayer, and intuition to thousands of students in the United States, Canada, Europe, and the Far East. Dr. Shumsky has done about 420 speaking engagements and over 420 media appearances since her first book was published, including Woman's World, GQ, Cosmopolitan, and PBS Pledge Drive specials. She is the founder of Divine Revelation, a complex technology for contacting the divine presence and listening to the inner voice. She now lives in a motorhome and travels extensively and continuously, facilitating workshops, seminars, spiritual retreats, as well as tours to India's and other sacred destinations. And Dr. Susan Shumsky and I will be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Once again, toll-free, 1-877-528-8255 is toll-free. And my name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone. And this segment of the X Zone is being brought to you by Amira Soul Mystic, Master Clairvoyant Healer, and Spiritual Teacher. Give Amira a call for life changes, creating life changes, and positive results. 1-800-659-6796. That's 1-800-659-6796. And visit her online at www.soulmystic.com. I'll be back in 2 minutes with my very special guest this hour, a good friend of mine, Dr. Susan Shumsky, as the X Zone continues right here on the Talkstar Radio.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, Old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Dr. Susan Shumsky is my very special guest this hour. We're going to be talking about Susan's new book, How to Hear the Voice of God. And joining me now is Dr. Susan Shumsky. How are you, Dr. Susan?
Wonderful. I'm so glad to be here tonight with you.
Always great talking to you, my dear friend. Where are you these days?
Today I am in Denver, Colorado. I was just at the International New Age Trade Show, which happens here every year. And I've been there for the last 3 days. It's been a very wonderful experience to be at that show.
Excellent. Now, first of all, thank you very much for sending me a copy of your new book, How to Hear the Voice of God. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this book helps anyone to be able to have a deep experience of that divine presence within them. The wonderful thing about this book is that it has a CD that is bound into the book. So they can just pop the CD right into their player and close their eyes and go into a very deep meditative state. It's a guided meditation CD that will help them to have what I call the breakthrough experience. And that is the experience of being able to, well, hear the voice of God, experience the presence of God, and have the feelings that come along with that divine presence, and also to experience what we call the inner signal. So it's a very profound experience.
Now, Susan, is this book and the accompanying CD for people of all ages?
Actually, it is for people of almost all ages. I don't think that young children would probably want to sit for a long time and listen to that CD and go into a very deep meditative state. So I wouldn't really recommend it for young children.
Teenagers
I'd say
and
age
up.
12 and up.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about the people who are able to hear God speak to them, because when people say I can hear the voice of God, a lot of people look at them as if they've got 3 heads and they should be in a loony bin.
Well, in fact, that's the prevailing belief in our culture, is that anyone who claims to hear the voice of God, that they need to go to a psychiatrist and get a prescription for psychotropic drugs, because we believe that the only people who are allowed to actually have conversations with God or to hear that divine voice, well, maybe Neil Donald Walsh in the present time. And then other than that, great saints, sages, prophets, and holy men, and I emphasize the word men, and other great beings that lived 2,000 years ago in some faraway land. And we don't really believe that modern-day people can have this experience. But in fact, it has been demonstrated in my life and the life of tens of thousands of people whom I've personally touched that anyone can experience the presence of God and hear the voice of God. It really is not that difficult, and anyone can do it. But it is true that people do look upon this kind of experience as something that isn't real or that perhaps even dangerous, because we hear about, for example, mothers who murder their own children because they heard a voice that told them to do that, or perhaps a cult leader like Marshall Applewhite who told his disciples to commit suicide because he thinks he heard the voice of God. So people are often deluded by inner voices, and that is the reason why we consider such people who claim to hear the voice of God to be little less than sane.
I have to ask you at this point, you said something that never struck me before, but why is it in the Bible only men heard the voice of God?
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that is our patriarchal society is like that, that men have run the world for a long time. And
listen, I'm going to share a little secret with you that every guy in the world knows, okay?
What's that?
That behind every successful man is a woman.
Right, that's true, actually.
And the greatest leaders throughout history have been women.
Yeah, they really actually run things. Men get the credit, but women actually run things.
And I think that's wrong. In my books, that's wrong. Give credit where credit is due.
Mm-hmm. Actually, women are known to be intuitive, and often it's easier for women to hear that inner voice. They call it women's intuition or whatever. But I do believe that the voice of God is that voice of intuition within, the still small voice within. And I have been kind of on this campaign since 1986 to try to help as many people as possible to hear that inner voice and to develop that ability to experience the divine presence in a very profound and meaningful way.
We listen to spiritual leaders talk. We listen to gurus talk. We listen to philosophers talk, and yet they never talk about the voice within that never changes. And I wonder why. That little voice that you've heard all throughout your lifetime that has never changed.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because Mahatma Gandhi used to talk about the inner voice and listening to the still small voice of God within. And he said that the only voice that he trusts, the only voice that he would allow to control him is that divine voice. So there are some great spiritual leaders who do talk about that inner voice, the divine voice. And it's interesting that you say it never changes, because, in fact, that is the one constant in your life.
That's right.
Is that inner presence, that presence within which gives you comfort, love, and inspiration, and which guides you. And I have a feeling that you do have that experience, don't you, Rob?
Yes, I do.
Of that inner voice that
guides
I do.
You. I always have. Ever since I can remember, I've had this inner voice that I used to call my best friend. as a child.
Exactly. It is like having a best friend, a comforter within.
Exactly.
It's like having that experience of inner solace and peace and wisdom that you can turn to at any time that you have trouble or that you want an answer.
Yes.
In fact, really the entire secret to experiencing this inner voice or this divine presence is simply to ask. Asking is the entire premise of what it is that I teach. Ask and it shall be given you. So by asking, you receive the answer to your question. By asking, you receive inspiration, divine guidance, healing, wisdom, all that you want. It simply comes by asking. And in fact, you must ask because the divine presence or God within you will not force itself upon you. You have to ask.
What are some of the commonest questions, and what kind of answers does God give those who ask?
Well, in fact, I use it on an everyday basis for really practical advice in my life. I know that people probably think, well, if you hear the voice of God, it must be something really far out, really profound, really poetic, and so forth. The fact is, I use it for simply asking advice, like, is it wise for me to go in this direction? Is it wise for me to invest in this? Is it wise for me to take this position? Is it wise for me to speak in this place? You know, just very, very practical things. Is it wise for me to write this book? Things that are related to my own profession or related to my own life. It can be something like, is it wise for me to get involved in a particular relationship? Or is it wise to end a particular relationship? All these kinds of things. The fact is that the still small voice within us, that intuitive voice, the voice of God, whatever you want to call it, when we rely on that, then we have great inner confidence because we know that we're making wise decisions and wise choices. And that is really what people need nowadays. They need to know what direction to go in because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of difficulties, people are challenged with everyday life in so many ways. For example, the fuel crisis now and just so many different things that come up in our life that we need answers. And you can find the answers within. It really is possible to do that and to rely on yourself and not rely on other people. Rely on that still small voice within. And that is why I just think that this is the most powerful and profound and meaningful experience is to have this connection within and to be able to ask questions and get very practical answers.
Yeah, in fact, whenever I do something right, this is what my inner voice sounds like.
I know. I get the woo a lot myself. In fact, I usually say it out loud. I'm jumping up and down and going, woo. Right.
But people need to ask. And then there's one very important aspect that I would say 90% of the people forget, and that's to listen.
Exactly.
You know, they say, well, it didn't happen. Well, did you listen for the answer? Well, no. Well, you ask a question and listen. Communication is a two-way street.
Yes, you do have to do that. In fact, here I'll give you the big secret. This is how you do it. You just sit down in a chair and you close your eyes. You take a few deep breaths. You get quiet and still and centered and balanced within yourself. You go into what we would call a meditative state. That means a state of inner quietude, simply. It's not some big deal. It's not some big yogi thing or like you're in a pretzel position or anything. You're just sitting comfortably in a chair and getting quiet and just settling down to deep relaxation. And then you simply ask. You ask a question. You ask for something specific that you want, like the answer to a question or guidance
I have to ask a question right now. I have to ask you to wait until we come back from the other side of the news. Dr. Susan Shumsky is our special guest. www.doctorsusan.org. We'll be back after the news. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Susan Shumsky is our very special guest this hour. www.doctorsusan.org, and it's always great having Dr. Susan here with us in the X-Zone. We're talking about her new book, How to Hear the Voice of God. And Dr. Susan, again, thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's always great talking to you from wherever you may be on this continent. You just travel.
I do. I live in a motorhome. I have no home base. I go all over the country, and I also travel internationally. I was just in Peru and Easter Island recently, a couple of months ago. I went there with John David Morton, a very close friend of mine. Yes. We did a joint venture together, and we brought a wonderful group there, and it was just totally awesome.
Excellent.
And I do actually send people to Peru and India and Bali and Egypt and just different sacred places, also places within the United States that have wonderful spiritual vortexes like Mount Shasta, the Tetons, and Sedona. I was just in Sedona teaching a retreat there a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So it's just fun, I love to travel.
Dr. Susan, how would someone know that the voice that they are hearing is the voice of God and not a voice that they're making up themselves?
That's a really great question, because there's 4 different places that you might be receiving that message from. Either the spiritual world, the mental world, the astral world, or the environment. In the spiritual world, you can be in contact with the divine presence, with God, angels, archangels, ascended masters, divine beings, and your higher self. And that's the place that I recommend that people get their messages from. But there's 3 other places that people might tap into inadvertently and delude themselves into thinking that they are receiving true divine revelations or true messages from the divine voice, when in fact they are simply either talking to themselves or tapping into other places that are not that divine voice. For example, the astral world, where they might contact earthbound spirits or even faker spirits, manipulative or malevolent or mischievous spirits. Another place would be the mental world, where, in fact, you're just tapping into your own previous beliefs, habits, and conditioning. And the environment means tapping into the kind of flotsam and jetsam environmental static or beliefs of humanity, the collective beliefs of humanity. So there's so many places that you might tap into, and I have a system to help people to be able to discern. I call it the 10 tests of spiritual discernment, so that people can tell the difference between the true voice of spirit and other voices in their minds.
What would happen, and I hope you don't take this question the wrong way, if someone is suffering from a multiple personality syndrome, how would they know that they're listening to the voice of God and not one of their other personalities?
That's a really great question, because You know, it's interesting that there are some people who are diagnosed as mentally ill when, in fact, they're just having spiritual experiences that they don't understand. And then there are other people who really are mentally ill because they are off balance and they're having delusions or hallucinations. So it's important to learn how to distinguish and how to tell the difference. And, in fact, it could be like a multiple personality disorder, or it could even be a possession or oppression where an astral entity has taken over their mind and they think they're getting some great insight or intuition when, in fact, they are being influenced by an entity or earthbound spirit. So there's a lot of different places and different beings that might be talking to a person in their head, and we need to sort that out. Now, one of the most important tests is what we call the experience test, which means that when you're in contact with the true divine voice, you feel a sense of love, comfort, security. You feel loved. You feel that you are home. You feel that you are content. And most importantly, you feel a feeling of integration, wholeness, and oneness. If a person has mental illness, they will not feel this oneness and wholeness. If a person is in contact with an astral entity, they will not feel integration. They will feel disintegration, and they will feel drained, and they will feel that they are empty and hollow inside. They will not feel this experience of wholeness and fullness and joy, great joy, great inner happiness, great inner peace.
Yes.
That is the experience of the divine presence.
How does one learn to hear God? Now,
well,
we're talking about, how you know it's God, but how do you learn to actually hear Him? I know how I do it, but how can people who have never done it, how can they do it? How can they learn how to do this?
Right. So before the break, I was talking about how anyone can actually do this. Briefly, I said that all you need to do is sit down in a chair and take a few deep breaths and get quiet and still and centered and balanced within yourself. Go into a state of quietude. Now, if you find that difficult, then I would suggest doing something that makes you feel quiet, like taking a long hot bath or walking outside in nature or listening to some quiet music, anything that makes you feel really relaxed. And then you ask. You really have to ask. You ask a question, or you ask for guidance, or you ask. It's good to ask a specific question. That's really the easiest way to get this.
Right, but they're not
rolling.
But people aren't going to get the numbers for next week's lottery.
No, I don't suggest that they try that. And in fact, I don't suggest that they ask any what I call predictive questions, because predictive questions will lower your vibration and will draw in or call in lower energy. And then you brought up something very important before, and that is, after you've asked that question, then you have to really take another deep breath and completely let go, and you have to listen.
Yep.
You have to completely let go and do what I call the do nothing program. That means you do nothing, nothing, and less than nothing. And then the still small voice of God will speak to you in your heart. And it will come to a person in one of three ways: either seeing, hearing, or feeling. Those are the three basic ways that we experience the divine presence. So you might hear some words come into your mind or into your heart. Some words like "I love you" or something like that will come to you. Or you may see a vision, a very pleasant vision perhaps that will answer your question. Or you may get a feeling, like a gut feeling. You feel led in a certain direction. I could give you an example if you want.
Please.
That'd be good. So, for example, let's say you ask a question about, is it wise for me to take a particular job? Right? That would be a practical question that you might ask your higher self or ask God within. And then when you go into this state and you get quiet and you ask, and then you see a vision of a door opening, a doorway, and then a flood of light coming through that doorway, Well, obviously that would be an answer to your question, that yes, take the opportunity. Or maybe you see a vision of like a brick wall, just a brick wall in front of you, and then that would indicate that, no, it's not a good idea to take that, to try to go into that job. So that's one way you could get visual. You could get auditory. Auditory means you hear some words. You might hear the word yes or the word no, or you might hear some message like it's highest wisdom to take that job, and it's a good idea to talk to so-and-so in the company. And, you'll get a message. You'll actually get a message. And then message it with words. That would be a verbal message. We call that auditory. And then the third way would be you just get a feeling. You just get a gut feeling or an inner knowingness, just the sensing, a good feeling, maybe a joyous feeling, a happy feeling. And that would also be an answer to the question. So those are the three basic ways that we get answers. And some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, and some people are more kinesthetic.
Okay, is it safe to say
their answer.
Is it safe to say that the answer will come to you in a manner that is familiar to you?
Exactly, in a manner that you can understand, in a manner that you can relate to. And different people have different senses, more acute, more developed. So a person will either be more visual or more kinesthetic or more auditory. And those are the three basic ways.
Can a person at bedtime go to sleep with the question that they want to ask on their mind? And if they do this, Dr. Susan, would the answer come to them in a dream?
That absolutely is one way that we can receive messages from the divine presence, and that is in a dream. And we might get a answer to the question, or we might have a dream about that particular question, and when we wake up, we just know we have the answer. So that is really a good way to ask, yes. And some people are very good at that, getting their messages in dreams. Whatever works for you, and some people get the message in an omen. Something in their environment tells them, or they get maybe even they open a book and there's the answer, or there's so many ways to get answers to our questions. What my book, How to Hear the Voice of God, does, though, it really helps you develop those three basic ways: clairvoyance, clairaudience, or clairsentience. Those three basic ways, and it's really developing your ESP, is what it is.
Throughout history, there have been, as you and I talked earlier, people like Daniel, who was in the lion's den, who heard the voice of God. And, of course, Moses heard the voice of God. But how about Joan of Arc? Were the voices, or the voice that she heard, was that the voice of God?
I believe that, in fact, she also was in touch with spiritual beings. Could be angels, archangels, divine beings, who did speak to her, and she reported that. I mean, she wasn't shy about it. She said that she heard these voices, and it was she claimed it was archangels, I believe, and that she had very, very accurate predictions and accurate messages that she gave to the court and so forth, and, she was right. I mean, she was burnt at the stake because she was so right. So they thought she was demonic, or she was, possessed or whatever.
Would it then be the communication at times that someone is receiving not the voice of God, but the voice of an angel?
Yes, it can be. It could be an angelic voice. It could be your guardian angel. It could be an ascended master. These are all messengers of God as well. It could be your higher self. Really, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, as long as it's from the spiritual world, as long as it's from the spiritual plane. And I think it's also a good idea to identify who or what you are in contact with. And in my 10-test system, that inner name, or the identification of who it is one of the tests, so that you know who or what you're getting a message from. Is it Holy Spirit? Is it a deity that you believe in, such as Jesus Christ or Lord Krishna or Lord Buddha, or is it an angel? Is it an archangel? Is it Archangel Michael talking to you, Gabriel? So it's a good idea to discover who or what that is, and that will help you identify it.
What kind of things have God been telling you, Dr. Susan?
Well, one thing that God is telling a lot of people is that the world is changing in consciousness, that there is a tremendous new consciousness that's coming on the entire planet, and that there's a lifting of consciousness right now. This has been a gradual thing that's been going on for about the last 50 years, and it is getting kind of faster and faster, and more people are really getting on board with this higher consciousness, and more souls are being born on this planet with higher consciousness. The planet is really going through a vibratory lifting, and I have a very positive attitude about our planet. That
all right, why don't
really
you tell
going
us
into a higher vibration.
Okay, Susan, tell me what your thoughts are about the future and what God has told you about the future, or your guardian angels when we come back from this commercial break. Dr. Susan Shumsky is our very special guest. We're talking about her new book, How to Hear the Voice of God. It also includes a meditation audio CD, www.doctorsusan.org. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the Talkstar Radio Network, live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
Listen to the voice of God. That's what we're talking about this hour here on the X-Zone. We're talking to Dr. Susan Shumsky. Her website is www.doctorshumsky.org. The name of her new book is called How to Hear the Voice of God. It also includes, in the very back of it, a meditation audio CD. And Dr. Shumsky, where is your book available?
It is available on my website. That's drsusan.org, and it's available at Amazon.com. It's available at Borders and Barnes & Noble and your local bookstores.
I said Dr. Shumsky, didn't I? .com, .org.
It's drsusan.org, drsusan.org. And so it's really widely available in your local bookstores. You can get it in most esoteric bookstores and so forth also.
All right. Now, before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about the messages that you've received from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if we can continue.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the thing is that this Earth is going through a very huge transformation right now, and it will continue for the next few years. People talk about a 2012 event. It's not really a 2012 event. It's more a time period of many years. And during that time period, our planet is undergoing a big change, and that change has to do with consciousness, a rising in consciousness. More and more people are becoming more enlightened in the sense that they are more aware of their environment, they are more aware of their health, they're more aware of the health of the planet, they're more aware of spirituality rather than old dogma and old beliefs that are beginning to really die off very quickly. And, many people believe that fundamentalism or dogmatic religions are very strong and powerful, but in fact, there has been a recent survey and a recent book even that's been published about how really fundamentalism is going downhill very rapidly, and people are becoming more and more aware of the other world, of this what we call spiritual world. Yeah. People are becoming more aware of that and having more experiences of that. So the veil between the worlds is becoming thinner and thinner, and we are really going into an age of enlightenment, an age of spirituality that is going to be unprecedented in the history of humanity, and it's coming very, very quickly. It's coming upon us as we speak right now.
Dr. Susan, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Always great talking to you. Safe travels, my friend.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate you inviting me. I've really enjoyed being on your show.
Take care. Travel wisely. Bye-bye now. www.doctorsusan.org. When we come back from the news at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past, Dr. Nick Begich will be joining me. We're going to be talking about angels don't play this kind of harp. Tesla technology here on the X Zone, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario.